In a bustling town where tradition and faith were deeply intertwined, there lived a man named Zaid. He was well respected in his community, known for his acts of charity, his regular attendance at the mosque, and his public expressions of faith. To the outside world, Zaid seemed to have everything in order: a successful business, a happy family, and a life deeply rooted in religious practice. But despite all these outward signs of devotion, Zaid felt an unsettling void inside him. Though he went through the motions of faith, praying 5 times a day, fasting during Ramadan, giving charity, Zaid knew in his heart that something was missing. His prayers felt routine. His charity felt more like an obligation than a true act of compassion. When he spoke of God, it was as if he was reciting words he no longer felt. There was no connection, no sense of divine closeness. Deep down, Zaid realized he wasn't being fully honest with God or with himself. One night, after an exhausting day, Zaid sat on his prayer mat after the evening prayer, feeling particularly lost. He stared at the words of the Quran, but they didn't move him the way they once did. His heart felt heavy, burdened by an invisible weight. In the silence of his home, with his family asleep, Zaid whispered a question to the heavens. Why can't I feel you, God? Why do I feel so far away when I'm trying to do everything right? This was the first time Zaid had spoken to God from his heart in years. And in that moment, something shifted inside him, as if his soul had been waiting for this raw and vulnerable confession. The next morning, as Zaid went about his day, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, even if it was subtle. He still had the same responsibilities, the same routine, but his mind kept drifting back to his prayer the night before. He realized that, for the first time in a long while, he had been truly honest with God. He had voiced his doubts, his frustrations, and his longing for something deeper. That evening, Zaid returned to the mosque, but this time, his heart was restless with questions. He approached the mosque's imam, an older man with a quiet wisdom, and said, Imam, I feel like I've lost my way with God. I do everything I'm supposed to, but my heart feels empty. What am I missing? The imam listened carefully, then responded with a gentle smile. Zaid, many people come to me with this same concern. You've been following the rituals, but perhaps you've forgotten the most important aspect of worship: sincerity. Being honest with God means more than just following the rules. It means opening your heart completely, admitting your weaknesses, your fears, and your doubts. God doesn't just want your outward actions. He wants your heart. Zaid nodded, but he wasn't sure he fully understood. But how do I do that? I've been praying for years, but I don't know how to truly connect. The imam thought for a moment, then said, Start by talking to God as if you were talking to a close friend. Strip away the formalities and speak from your heart. Tell him your worries, your failures, your hopes, and be honest about where you are spiritually. God already knows, but he wants to hear it from you. It's in those moments of raw honesty that you'll start to feel the connection again. Zaid left the mosque that night with the imam's words echoing in his mind. As he walked through the quiet streets, he realized that his relationship with God had become mechanical. He had been more concerned with appearing religious than with actually being connected to his faith. It was as if he had been checking off boxes on a list, rather than truly engaging with the divine. Determined to change, Zaid made a new commitment to himself. He would stop pretending, stop hiding behind rituals, and start being honest with God in everything. That night, instead of praying the usual way, he sat down and simply spoke to God, pouring out his heart. He admitted his doubts, his frustrations, and even his fears of not being good enough.